Shut up and sit down.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 150. This is the final episode of the Fitness Devils incarnation. Now, you will continue to get downloads on this download stream. I will be taking it over solo. Dean, life and business is going to keep Dean very, very busy. He does have the pump with Jeb Johnston. So if you guys want to continue to hear Dean's incoherent ramblings, I would suggest very strongly.
It always sounds bad when you say it like that. Like he's got the pump. Actually, maybe that sounds actually good. Never mind. Take it back. Sorry.
So I thought you were saying that the fact that I always
we should say it like the pump or something. Like so
like one of the reviews on our podcast is that Dean sounds drunk all the time. Anyway, so obviously, if you've been a loyal listener and you enjoy, if you've been a loyal listener, you appreciate both of us and our unique styles and all our guests, and you're going to get more of the same from Dean and Jeb's product. And I'm going to continue on with this stream, and I'm probably going to fumble with it a little bit because Dean is great at keeping conversation going. But I hope that you've enjoyed everything as we've done it so far, and I hope that you guys will continue to tune into what we've got coming up next. There's not going to be a major format change. I'm going to tighten up some things a little bit. We're going to still be bringing on big industry guests. And today, to send us off, we actually got Alex Viada. He's returning. We talked to Alex quite a long time ago in one of our most downloaded episodes. I think it's one of the top 10 downloaded episodes out of about 150.
Awesome.
Yeah. So he leaves the crown for the most downloads ever.
I concede that one.
Yeah, everyone says that.
It's like, oh, she deserves it.
No, he was trying to catch her, and he just couldn't do it. He was close, but he never quite caught Sophie. So.
But yeah, so don't fuck it up, basically, buddy.
Right.
So I guess let's start this off. What have you been up to? There's kind of a delay here. So what have you been up to lately? I guess it's just to kind of catch up, and then we can figure out where we're going with this thing.
Oh, lately, honestly, more of the same. Like I was chatting with you guys a little bit, before we got on here, talking about how, kind of recent moving out to a more rural area hasn't really changed my lifestyle that much. Just been basically out here maintaining, still doing online coaching. Kind of shifted my role with the company a little bit more. I'm working with just a handful of clients personally. Working on a couple side projects, couple of side projects with some good friends and colleagues, people I respect in the business, doing a little kind of behind the scenes, like programming work for some of them. Working still on educational content, a lot of that, really just trying to diversify and, kind of keep myself busy right now. It's been a weird time for fitness. I think, right now, the last couple of months, it's not that our businesses is so affected. It's that a lot of the public narrative is so affected. I think for a lot of us in the business, especially those of us who kind of want to stay on the forefront of things, keeping your finger on kind of the pulse of what people are talking about, what they're wondering about, what they're discussing, and it's all fitness related, is something we kind of want to stay engaged in. And it's been challenging lately because, fitness, whether rightly or wrongly, seems to have taken a really back seat in public consciousness. So, it's a little case of where I think a lot of us are trying to, we're casting around a little bit for what to talk about, what to discuss, how to help people, how to stay current. And, I think sometimes it ends up with people putting their foot in the wrong areas. But, yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's changing too, because it's like, okay, we're over talking about it. Let's talk about new stuff. And it's almost like this big cycle. But I will say, I expected you to be on a bike right now. Just because for anyone doesn't know, Alex does these things he does Q&As on his bicycle. But you slowed down at those, actually. Where have they been?
What's that? The I know. Well, that's really part of it. Kind of like I was saying, I've got a couple topics lined up that I'm going to do longer ones on. But it just, it seemed to be the case that every week there was something people were wondering about or talking about, or some new fitness headline or something, and something I could kind of sink my teeth into and say, okay, this is interesting and this is current. Like, let's discuss this. And lately, it's like, I don't want to talk about mask wearing. So, what else am I, looking at topics like that? It's kind of the things that come up with the bigger overarching ones. Like I'm working on one now on intermittent fasting, but that's not a quick Q&A type topic. That's something a little more in depth. And, even doing a 20 or 30-minute IGTV video on it still isn't going to do it justice, though I'm going to try. Yeah. So, it's a little more of that. kind of where I've been.
You hit on something there, and you mentioned mask wearing, but it's and the overarching conversation of probably the last, I'd say, 4 months. Fitness concepts, I'm paraphrasing you, have been hijacked by coronavirus. They've been hijacked by incidents of police brutality, Black Lives Matter, social concerns, and then it's with coronavirus. Mask wearing is this big argument now, and I think that it's tricky as a fitness professional to feel like you actually have permission to talk about fitness. And I notice with both the social issues, certainly with coronavirus and mask wearing, there's a lot of people in our industry. Two things. One is they're shaming other people, right? And they, even if they're on the scientific or ideological high ground, they're shaming people. And when did shaming become okay, especially by the people who would most loudly denounce, say, fat shaming, which we know doesn't change behavior, doesn't make people want to lose weight? When did it all of a sudden become okay to shame people? Because I'm reading one of Brene Brown's books, and Brene's stuff is great, and she deals directly in shame. And you can't get more explicit than shaming people doesn't work. It doesn't change your behavior. So I see people who engage in shame over mask wearing is a good example, as not really actually in their depth wanting to change other people's behavior, but wanting a moral high ground to criticize other people. And then what you see are these little echo chambers of people who agree, and we have more divisiveness across the industry. And then the other thing I'm seeing is the last 4 months, we have a ton of people in our industry who are stepping way outside of their scope of knowledge and talking about things that, I'm sorry, they're not qualified to talk about. And one of the messages I have is it's really okay not to be drawn into this. It's okay not to be shamed into feeling you have to take a position on a social issue or a health issue, because this stuff is really the realm of the people who are far better educated in this and informed in this. It's okay to stay within the niche that you feel you're most qualified to talk to your audience about nutrition, to talk to your audience about fitness, and to try to make their lives better, right? Because we're all in this industry to try to make lives better. And we actually, if someone is actively shaming you into not staying on your mission or having an opinion about something that you don't feel comfortable talking about, well, look at the fact that they're shaming you. And maybe you could ask yourself, is this person really an influence that I should be paying close attention to in my career? Maybe look at the people who are really doubling down on making the world better within the scope that they know best. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. I think part of it is the first thing about fitness is, it's one of these fields where you really get this, kind of rampant ultra-crepidarianism where everyone thinks that since, being in fitness, we have our hands in a little bit of psychology, we have our hands in nutrition, physiology, biomechanics. It goes down the list where I think a lot of fitness professionals, we have a very surface knowledge of a lot of different topics, and we kind of have to. For what we do and for who we work with. And it's very much a trait of, especially a lot of fitness professionals now to say, okay, here's something new I can use in my practice. I'm going to expose myself to this and learn enough to help people. But when you start to take that out to its logical extension, I think a lot of people believe that since they have put in some level of research on something, they are now a sufficient authority on it. And, it kind of rightly or wrongly, like I said, it's a business that really does reward people for a little bit of this, jack of all trades type of approach. But when you get to more complex issues like this, I think it comes out really quickly that there's not a lot of depth to a lot of this understanding. And especially now where something that is seen as a health issue, like for example, the pandemic, it's also tied into economics, it's tied into politics, it's tied into, much more advanced psychology, the virology, the, epidemiology. It's just, there are so many fields involved that are so complicated that this kind of surface understanding has really just kind of led to a lot of knee-jerk reactions on people's part. And fitness people are also, they're not always the greatest at practicing what they preach. When you say shaming is bad, and everyone is very willing to say, okay, yeah, things like fat shaming don't work. Making people feel guilty for their behavior results in resistance and not necessarily, results in justifications. But we're not always good at really seeing and translating that into other areas. We think fat shaming is bad, not because we realize that shame psychologically is almost paradoxical and we've got to apply that elsewhere and have empathy elsewhere. We just think that fat shaming is bad. We don't think that shaming other behaviors can have the same effects.
Yeah, they don't actually like take, like you said, they get a base level understanding of this one thing, and they don't actually look at the bigger picture and say it's actually a concept that you should be possibly applying to other stuff. And you see almost like the chinks in the armor the second you get what did Greg call them, slacktivism from the fitness world, and it's just like, yeah, I don't know. We were talking about how you haven't really jumped in, but it's like you can see both sides of it, and you chose to stick to fitness, which is a choice either way. But I mean, you're good at that shit.
and that's kind of it. Like, you know, I guess, and that comes from having so many friends across the entire spectrum, on the very conservative side all the way to the, you know, I'm a true leftist side. And, you know, when they articulate the beliefs and when they stay within and explain their belief structure and why they feel a certain way, it's logical. I don't like the idea of pointing at someone just going, well, they're stupid.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you know, most people, it's not that they're stupid. They might be uninformed, but for the most part, they have a worldview, and the way they feel and the way they believe is consistent with that worldview. If you don't try to understand that, you're never going to convince them of anything. But you would think fitness people, given how important it is for us to empathize with our clients, you don't just tell somebody, well, just throw all the junk food out of your house and eat chicken and rice every day. That's not going to work. You have to meet people where they're at and say, okay, here's your behavior. Here's how I want to see it change. I'm going to put myself in your shoes, not think of you as an idiot, but think of you as a human being. And think of you as a human being whose actions are based on your own decisions. Your beliefs are based on your family structure, on your society, on everything else, on your current circumstances. And I'm going to try to help you come to a better conclusion, in my mind, by working with you, not by just pointing my finger at you and calling you dumb.
I think a lot of what we're seeing in these internet arguments within our fitness community, which I always tell up and coming trainers, like, guys, stay out of that stuff. Okay. Like, that's not a good use of your time. And I've noticed a very strong correlation with the people who participate most in that stuff and people who haven't established a strong brand, a strong vein of success in the industry, are not reliable content creators. And instead they just sort of live within these arguments. And I find that a lot of these people, and they're on both sides of the ideological spectrum, they're not trying to communicate. They're not trying to change the mind of someone who has a different opinion. Like you said, they're pretty much just calling each other stupid. And they are performing for the people who agree with them versus seeking a consensus. And I think this permeates everything that's going on in our world right now. It's more polarized than ever. And we see this not just the fitness industry.
But just know that. Like, I would have fucked up. I've been posting those stupid videos with like my face on the thing, and I'm making fun of keto and
Those are
CrossFit.
Those
But I know who's going to comment on them. Someone was like, well, what if these people get mad? I'm like, I'm fucking in the fitness sphere. They're all going to agree with me. But like, I think that not knowing that is the problem, because like you're pandering to, well, essentially you're pandering to your people, and they think that they're trying to change everyone's life, and it's not fucking happening. But okay, I actually do want to, I forgot about, like, you're like the expert in this. Okay, what's your thoughts on this CrossFit keto resurgence insulin fat code? Because you're essentially the dude who would have an opinion that's probably educated that I want to hear. And I know you've given it before, but it's like, it's back, man. It's back.
It is. And, you know, I think this is a case, actually, you know, it almost ties into a little bit of what we've been talking about meeting where we're at. If you talk about something like keto, or you talk about something like paleo, or you talk about sugar being evil and all that, it's not wrong in that it's related to part of the problem, but it's not the entirety of the problem. And pointing the finger at all of that, I think what CrossFit is trying to do, if you follow the general spirit of what they're talking about, you'll make some good decisions. You start cutting out a lot of sugars from your diet, you start doing a lot of other things, you know, you will see an improvement. But moving in the whole, like, you know, keto, sugar is evil type of direction, obviously it doesn't make sense for the top echelon of athletes. I mean, you know, it was the kind of thing where, you know, when they would start doing that, the CrossFit games, like the meals the day before competition, and it's all like a keto meal, and everyone else is sitting there joking about, all the athletes are joking how they're going to go carb load when they get back to the room. Like, this is something that's done as branding that I think is trying to appeal to like the average. It's trying to influence behavior, I think, more than it is an actual true belief that this is the way to go. I think they set their targets there to try to get people away from certain things, fully realizing that it's kind of just creating a narrative that I think is trying to create good habits.
Well, and I think that like it's interesting. I do agree. I want to know if they're that contextually informed, but they picked the two best storytellers, probably arguably in the last 10 years in terms of nutrition for the general public. Like they picked the dudes that got everyone to buy in. And so it's interesting that they aligned with those superpowers. And I want to know where it's going to go, because I think that they're trying to rebrand as health, right? Like they're kind of moving away from that high performance athleticism, which even if some of those concepts are wrong, if people stop eating sugars and eat more whole foods and stay away from these things, it's probably as a whole net positive. It's still fun to make fun of, but
here's something important that is I want to jump on to include in this conversation. Notice, all listeners, notice that Alex didn't turn around and start shitting all over CrossFit. Recently, obviously, Greg Glassman said some really stupid, insensitive things. And Glassman, fair enough, the guy has pretty much a track record of being kind of a crappy human being. But when it all happened, there's a big bonfire, attacking CrossFit. CrossFit was getting canceled. And I didn't participate in that. And most of the successful people in our industry didn't participate in, reveling in the bonfire and the teardown of CrossFit. If anything, I quietly thought to myself, there's a lot of people who CrossFit has positively affected. It's gotten them into gyms. It's helped them get in shape. Sometimes, sure, there's the injury bug with CrossFit, but fuck, I mean, have you ever met a powerlifter who's been doing it for any length of time, who isn't hurt? Bodybuilders are all wrecked over the years. Your average personal trainer may or may not be qualified. So in every fitness setting, it's just that CrossFitters seem to take the ribbing a lot worse, and they seem to be low-hanging fruit. So, okay, cool. Making fun of shit, fine. But just unilaterally beating up on CrossFit and tearing it down, how is that helping you? How is that making you look like a better person?
They got Gary Tobbs and Fung on
and I'm not because I don't like those guys, and I actually think they're both charlatans. I'll say that. But here's the important point is, be very careful about jumping on these bonfires and these teardowns. I think you can have very critical, thoughtful discussions about the flaws in any of these sort of things. But I tend to notice a very strong correlation between the people who will jump on and participate in that teardown. And at its core, it's a sense of resentment of success. CrossFit is powerfully successful. And when I see people ripping it apart, I see people who resent what CrossFit is, instead of people who spend their effort, their time, their energy, helping other people, building other people up, building their own brand, and offering positive things to our industry that help people.
Well, this is the one where it's like, but this is the cool thing, is like they literally, so like, yes, they've gotten trashed on for all the dumb shit, their backs, fucking kipping pull-ups, but then they stepped into territory where it's like the ribbing might actually be warranted a little bit, because this has nothing even to do with CrossFit. I want to hear Alex. Alex, sorry, get your finger up. I know you got something.
Well, okay, so I agree with Andrew and your assessment on the two figures that they brought in. In particular, these are individuals. Now, anyone who says, well, they're idiots is a complete fool, because these are not idiots. These are smart individuals. They are smart, they are savvy, and anybody coming in and saying, well, they're wrong and they're idiots is going to talk themselves in a corner, because whatever their arguments are, guys like Taubes are going to be able to talk circles around it for the most part. There's still a couple people in this industry who can beat them down in conversation. Granted, they may not have their charm, so who cares if you're right, if the audience likes the other person better? That's neither here nor there. It was a very smart move aligning with them, because, of course, it allows CrossFit to kind of thumb their nose a little bit. It gives them two very strong storytellers to help them enact some sort of, revitalize part of their brand that was always very critical to them. And that was the whole emphasis on stay away from sugar and healthy eating and diet and this and that and the other. I don't think I don't think it's the way to eat. I don't think there's any data that really supports that it's inherently any better. You know, the whole insulin hypothesis, you know, all of that has been thoroughly debunked, and I don't really think we need to do that here. But I guess the question is, and you know, with all these things, it's like, what is the strength in what they're doing right now? If the average person looks at that and is being swayed by that, what can we acknowledge about CrossFit's current approach, bringing these two guys in, that's actually going to be effective and that's going to be appealing to people? You know, a lot of the lessons, the small lessons they'll take away from that are things like, you know, avoiding refined sugar, you know, kind of like we talked about before. And those are things that appeal to people. And if we meet them there and say, you know what, CrossFit's actually doing a good job with that, let's just avoid going, you know, full bore on it. Just like CrossFit as a methodology, as a training methodology in general, it gets people lifting, it gets people on the barbell, it gets people moving, it gets people less afraid of cardio, you know, it gets people getting used to the idea that, you know, women can actually look jacked and be good. Like, it's done a lot of positive things. That doesn't mean everybody needs to go out and do Murph and give themselves rhabdo.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it defines two different arguments in camps, because like the people under the thing you're talking about generally is like fitness professionals in their fitness fucking circle making fun of CrossFit, and like it doesn't really trickle down. Like some of it does, and same thing with this insulin or the fat code and fucking whatever, what do they call it, the keto for CrossFit. Like that doesn't really, the good effects of that trickle down in the fitness circle jerk that's we're making fun of it, where I'm making videos and it's kind of funny. Like I don't know if that supersedes that. Like you know what I mean? Because I think that the net positive is they're doing well, but it's kind of funny to make fun of it too in our circle. So it's weird because I don't even know if it's a dumpster fire, because I don't think anything's even changed.
I think that's actually hit on a good point. You have to decide, okay, where is it okay to just kind of have an internal community, okay, like having a chuckle at it. But I find it rarely stays there. I find that it manifests as kind of this waste of time of just perpetually complaining about shit beyond your control. And it's this external locus of control versus stopping and going, okay, well, you know what? I'm not going to fucking worry about CrossFit, what they're doing, because at the end of the day, you should do everything you can to be an appealing brand, to grow your reach, you know, and take control of what you can actually control versus whining about shit that's beyond your control, so you can help more people. And I think that's at the heart of a lot of these problems. Is it's easier just to whine and moan and go, well, I'm not successful because, you know, CrossFit is out there and they're aligning with, you know, these people and they're spreading lies. Well, okay, how about you make your truths so accessible and interesting that people cannot help but find you?
Oh man,
Your point about Tubbs and Fung. Yeah, okay, like I've used the term charlatan on these guys, but these guys are great marketers. There's a famous example where Tubbs and Stefan Guyenet debated. Fuck, that was on Rogan, wasn't it? And so in Guyenet, The Hungry Brain, everybody go read that fucking book. It's amazing. And all of the evidence-based community are like, oh, Guyenet crushed Tubbs. But to an average listener, Guyenet came off as unsympathetic, kind of condescending, not necessarily charismatic, whereas Tubbs, great storyteller. And even though he's peddling a lot of stuff that isn't factually based, he's weaving it into such an effective narrative that the average listener, the everyday person, probably thinks that Tubbs presented the more compelling argument, even if it wasn't.
Narrative drives society at this point. Like, and he's probably one of the best. He's one of the best at it. It's actually kind of amazing if the evidence-based community could tell stories like that. Like I don't know how. I don't.
But they're just pissing and moaning about shit that's beyond their control. And I know I keep coming back to that point, but that's a point of frustration. And when I see people who just all they want to do is complain, instead of working really, really hard to actually accomplish something of their own, those are people I don't want to expose myself to. That's not people I want to listen to or get caught up in those conversations. I would really rather write. I would rather work on my own social media. I would rather behind the scenes help friends' careers and build them up and create connections so that way the people in my world are being successful. Right? That's the stuff I'm interested in.
You know, and I think what's so important and what a lot of people don't realize is that one of the critical keys to success for a fitness professional especially is empathy. It's the idea that if someone is talking to you, even if they're presenting something and you think what they've just said is an absolute pile of nonsense, if you start out and say, you know what, you make a couple good points. You know, I see what you're saying, but have you thought about this? That is so much more effective. Like for a field that, you know, you look at the best and the brightest, and you look at the good marketers and you look at the people who succeed, they're always the ones who sit down and say, I understand what you're struggling with right now. I understand what you're feeling. I'm going to listen to you. And I'm not going to make you feel bad for thinking this. I'm going to make you feel like, hey, I understand your problem. That is such a different mindset than the type that sits down and says, well, that's stupid. And that's really the key there. I mean, you guys know, like, it's that whole offer value instead of saying something else is dumb. Have empathy rather than just shooting down other people's conversations.
And maybe there's like a deeper question. Did this ever happen? Because like you basically kind of came at the industry, but like concurrent training was like, was it ever shit on in the sense where like you had to defend it and now you're kind of at the spot? Like, did that ever happen to you in the beginning? Because you had some weird ideas that like people wouldn't necessarily test because it's like, well, you can't do that. Cardio is stupid. Idiot.
Really, what was really interesting, and I think what really helped take it on was, when I first started out, I just pointed to people who are already doing it. I pointed to rugby players, to, guys in the military, to, track cyclists squatting 300 kilos. It was the kind of thing where you show people that you're not some arbiter of knowledge. You're not some arbiter of the truth. You're just kind of a conduit for, helping people find things that work or opening their minds and everything else. And by making it not about you, which is the goal, sometimes it is anyway, you let people find themselves in it. You let them come to the answers and come to the responses and come to the conclusions that you're espousing by looking at other examples. You're just kind of opening the door. You're not kicking them through it or, pulling a collar around their neck and jerking them the way you want them to go. So.
Yeah, if anyone watched, well, I guess we don't have this on video. You were definitely jerking it. It was. Sorry, I had to say it. Okay, maybe let's put this into something kind of more recent. Has there been anything that's like changed recently, like in terms of your overall philosophy? Because like, let's like look back to like even when you did the hybrid athlete, have you kind of changed your mind about anything? Like, I guess recently with all the new research coming out.
Honestly, I think if anything, a lot of the research coming out has shown me it's maybe even a little less complicated than I thought it was.
Yeah.
It's like when you start anything, when you say you've been trying to lose weight for years and years and years, you finally find one method that works and you think this is the answer. And, as you use that method to go on, it gets more and more complicated and more and more complicated. And you think, what are the factors that made us succeed? And, you can pull little things out, like say you stick to the same diet every day, or you restrict it further and further and you get better and better results. What are the parts of this whole approach that are actually succeeding for you? And I think early on, less so during the hybrid athlete, when I wrote that book, it was much more general, but I think you could see in my programming, there were a lot of specifics on consolidation of stressors and which muscles to use and whether to use, concentric only movements when you're working the antagonist movement and the lifting. And, kind of as it went on, I realized that you could get equally effective results by easing up on some of those issues. And a lot of the things that determine the success of a hybrid program or concurrent training are not necessarily the, absolute specifics on biomechanics, but, things that are a little more squishy, a little more subjective, a little things more like, obviously recovery aspects, but neurological aspects of it, psychological aspects of the training, nutrient balance, and things like that. So my approach has definitely gotten less complicated as time has gone on, like a little more intuitive, a little more flexibility in what you can do, which appeals to some people and doesn't appeal to others, because like everything else, there are some people who just want answers and who want to optimize everything and control every last variable. When you say, well, that doesn't really matter, they aren't too happy to hear that.
It's actually interesting you say that, because like I remember actually the antagonist argument and all that stuff. But if you look at like a lot of the factors, like a lot of it was just recovery. But then you look at the tempo stuff, and like it was just lighter loads at the end of the day. And like that probably intuitively, like if you're lifting 5-second eccentrics, you're going to lift lighter, and maybe that's the reason. But it's kind of cool to see that progression, because like you said, things haven't changed, but things have changed.
Yeah, it's a lot of the details have kind of softened a little bit, and you look at something and you realize, oh, that's why that worked. It wasn't this great, complicated, convoluted reason. It was actually relatively simple. Like you said, like I was doing all that tempo lifting, but really I was just using less weight and not doing, kind of high speed eccentric movement all the time, and that's why I could recover better. Who knew?
Yeah, and like we kind of get into it's actually kind of cool now. And you had like, I don't think it was your cycling one about the hypertrophy stuff, but you could see a lot of like your the nuanced approach of the hypertrophy research and your evaluation of it kind of is that same concept you literally just said.
Yeah.
Everyone's going too crazy about this shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And, again, I think it kind of interesting that ties back to a little bit we were talking about, like the whole being, in fitness of any sort, there are so many different things you have to take into account that, so many different disciplines and sciences and everything else that sometimes you don't quite know what you're looking at from the big picture. And, you don't have enough in-depth knowledge in any one area to realize that you're making a very elementary mistake in, your assumption of how this particular mechanism is working. So, if you only have a rudimentary understanding of biomechanics, you may not necessarily know why something works. You just know that it does. And not knowing the why makes it harder to break it down and reconstruct it. So,
well, then people this was on my other podcast, but with Kasim, and he does a lot of applied stuff. And at the same time, you almost get shit on for trying stuff and practicing stuff ahead of the curve when it's just interesting because I wouldn't say that everything was backed by research when you were doing it initially. Like there was probably a lot of applied stuff from your background as an athlete.
Yeah. Yeah. That was it. I mean, a lot of my early stuff was applied. A lot of it was honestly just even working with athletes I knew, working with the crew team at Duke. They were hugely helpful at the time. I mean, I think granted they were, they did the strength training, they did the endurance training, and looking at how their programs were put together. And, I was on a rugby team at the time, and granted it was a, kind of some of them were more beer league rugby players, but some of them were pretty good. And the ones whose training involved more than, literally just carrying the keg out of the field at halftime, actually, you could see a lot of these components in their training. So not a lot of research behind it, but a lot of kind of best practices that you compile over time.
I'm starting to piece together why you like beer. Your actual whole persona now is literally just rooted in rugby culture.
Honestly, man, a huge part of it. That's one of the reasons I love the sport. I was like, you go out, you play hard, you drink beer to recover, and then you go back out again.
Except for you figured it out. You're like, my body's fucked up for rugby. I'm just going to train and do the same thing, but possibly by myself sometimes.
Yeah, well, basically.
I don't know, Andrew, look like you had something to add there.
I really didn't. I've just actually been kind of quietly following along. I really don't have anything to say or offer at the moment, so I'll let you continue with that stream of thought.
Well, it was more just I like where that's going because it kind of ties back to what we were talking before. It's just everything's getting so complicated now. And even if we look back to our first podcast, we're talking HRV and all this other bullshit. And even that's not seeing a resurgence, but it's now all these complicated things are just becoming simple things. And it's kind of nice to see, but it's also at the same time, there's people trying to make it more complicated. I don't know. Maybe that's how progress is made. It's just this cyclical nature of, because since we talked now, hypertrophy research went, everyone fucking shit on that and blah, 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 blah. And now it's coming out the other end. It's well, maybe just work harder.
What you see about overcomplicating stuff is, in some cases they're very, very good people, but in some cases it's just people who are trying to establish a brand out of we understand a lot about nutrition. We understand about a lot about human physiology and training. So there's probably a lot less major breakthroughs that are yet to be discovered compared to the stuff that we already know. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the times someone is just really creating a brand or a market by taking a fairly simple concept and making it very, very complex or elaborate. And we see that. And sometimes it's someone who's on the forefront of doing, and their intentions are positive and they're genuinely trying to do good things. I mean, Alex, you described this more or less yourself, where you had all these concepts and you realize, oh shit, there's actually stuff that's probably a little bit simpler than I originally thought. But then you get the marketers and the influencer types who are grabbing onto, a concept like keto, right? How many fitness people have branded themselves as, a keto person or as a paleo person? CrossFit right now is grabbing on nutrition. And a lot of the time it's more than just, you got to eat the right amount of calories. You got to get enough protein, that sort of stuff. That stuff isn't as sexy or as marketable. We've talked that shit to death over and over and over. But there are just so many people who are grabbing onto something and making it really, really complex out of something that's actually quite simple.
I got to say that entire thing, going from the Dave Asprey biohacking background could very well be why there's so much appeal in that.
Yeah.
There's appeal to a certain set and simplicity, but there's also this appeal in a whole different personality type where, you believe that this is 1% of your problem, and this is 1%, and this is 1%, and this one, and you add all together all these different optimizations you can do, and you'll be a completely different person on the other side of it. And I sometimes wonder, because I sometimes think about this, because I know a lot of people who work with individuals who are both types. Keep it simple, just give me some loose guidelines, and the other people who are like, tell me up to the minute how many milligrams of whatever the hell I should put in my coffee every morning, that kind of stuff. And it's interesting because they're opposite sides of the coin, but we see both this phenomenon. I think a lot of professionals kind of don't know where they lie on this spectrum and who they want to appeal to, and it's a totally different message.
It's funny too. This is where and I think you even said this in your thing, because I actually watch I don't watch all of them all the time, but the hypertrophy one, I was like, man, he's on fire. But it's like the people making hypertrophy super complicated, for the most part, especially when it trickles down into Fit Pro land, they're not big anyway. So it's like you're talking about a nuanced approach when you fucking don't get it. Like, at least when Mike Israetel talks about shit and people argue and shit on him and Helms, like, at least they're fucking jacked. Like, that's the one weird thing, is like the complexity of hypertrophy research has ultimately led people to get lost in the metrics and not apply it. It's almost like they want to just use the metrics to pursue why they're not big, but then it's weird. It's just fucking weird.
Mike is an example. I mean, Mike does get very elaborate in certain sort of concepts, but if you absorb a lot of the stuff Mike is talking about, it's actually incredibly simple at its heart. And he does do a very good job of making it very accessible and simple. And like you said, Mike is enormous. Mike and I probably weigh similar amounts, and I'm a really muscular guy and lean. 260. Mike, and I'm 6'2". Mike is about 8 inches shorter than me and weighs about the same thing walking around, which is fucking terrifying. And the guys around him, I mean, his buddy Charlie, who's in half his videos, Charlie is jacked as fuck. Jared Feather is jacked as fuck.
You get lost in the nuance. Like, Alex can get lost in the nuance because you're fucking smart, and at least you're big. So like you actually don't get people messaging you being like, man, you're just too into the research. Look at you. Like, they don't say that to you. So it's good.
Well, yeah, because I think, and as you guys know, like, you guys have both, been at very high levels in terms of, athleticism and strength and discipline and throwing yourself into it. You realize that certain complications overwhelm, or if you focus too much on them, they do take away from the things that matter so much more. And, it's being able to just do little things with auto-regulation, whether you want to give it a name like, maximum recoverable volume or anything else. Basically, a lot of those things are just models for explaining, they're complex behaviors that are so complex, they're complex systems that are so complex that the rules are actually pretty simple to follow. And when you start getting caught up in, maximum number of sets per week and, time under tension per set and everything else, you're looking at all these small details and you're realizing that that's not what's critical here. And if you've ever actually put years and years and years of work into it, you would know that controlling those variables never really made a major difference to you, because they fall into the subset of ones that actually do matter.
Yeah, actually, like bodybuilders, I think Burrell would be a good example. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger never understood any of these concepts in terms of deep scientific, nor did Ronnie Coleman or any of these. But they rather intuitively figured out, these concepts in terms of doing, certain amounts of volume and a lot of the recovery concepts, mechanical tension, getting a pump, whether, the earlier belief that, a pump, metabolic stress, was a major driver of muscle growth, or kind of more as I interpret it, I think it's sort of a concurrent thing that happens when you do all the other things that drive muscle growth. You also happen to get a pump. So that's not to say, don't chase a pump. In fact, one of the best things you can possibly do if you want to build bigger muscles is actually find set and rep structures and rest intervals that create great pumps. Because if you're getting a great pump, that has a very, very strong correlation with actually growing long term, whether or not it's actually the underlying primary cause, which I personally don't think it is, based on my interpretation of all the research out there. So it all boils down to basic everyday behaviors, good, consistent habit behavior, improving those habits over time, be it fitness stuff like eating the right amount of food, the right quality of food, getting enough nutrition, getting enough sleep at night, the unsexy stuff, whether it's career-based stuff where it's like, make sure you're reading good literature, improving all these skills, developing technical skills. If you add up all these little things as you consistently do them in any realm, you're going to be really successful. And like you're,
you want to talk about hypertrophy though, dude? Like the people that like, I like have this like avatar in my head of the fucking person who's like, you gotta get your sleep, you gotta read your book and do your meditation. They're the dude that's not getting bigger because they missed the boat on the thing that they're actually trying to do, which was essentially get a pump and lift heavy ass weight.
Underlying things. If you're doing most of the underlying things that matter right, my thoughts are this, right? Usually the person who is reading the 10 pages, the person who is getting enough sleep, the person who is eating the right amount of food is the person who is being really successful, because those kind of habits tend to go hand in hand with a collective set of behaviors that are the things that matter. Does that make sense? Right?
Yeah.
Versus being caught up in the minutiae. I mean, with the classic example of, what supplements should I take? Dude, you're not fucking training enough. You're not getting anywhere near enough sleep. You're certainly not fucking eating enough food. Don't even fucking worry about, beta alanine or.
That's why I like Alex. Alex will like trash on it, and then he'll like you go lift in your fucking garage. You're like, oh, here's my deadlift. Just so you know, I still lift, and that's helpful. I don't know. I know that's on purpose too.
It is. I mean, it's funny though, because as you were just saying, that you do the things that are effective, you get to where you're going to be. It brought me back to the whole CrossFit thing. The reason why CrossFit can align themselves with someone like keto and all that and tell a compelling story, because if you follow their teachings on a rough basis and say, look, what I want you to do is 4 or 5 days a week, I want you to go get under a barbell. I want you to go get on the rower. I want you to avoid sugar. I want you to eat more grains, or your like whole grains and like meat or whatever. Well, not whole grains if it's keto, but I want you to eat more meat and healthy fats and everything else. 98% of people in pursuit of those basic rules there are going to be better off for it.
Especially when you take into consideration the average North American diet, right? Because we're comparing that starting point. We're not talking about us and our fit pro understanding of things switching over to keto or CrossFit. We're not going to fucking do that shit. But we're not the ones they're marketing to. And this is why all these fitness professionals who are twisted the fuck up about this are completely missing the point. They're not talking to us. We're not their audience. And you're spending your time pissing and moaning and fucking whining about it when you could actually be doing something to get, build your own brand.
And that's, you want to help fitness professionals communicate more effectively, teach them better empathy. That's really it. Teach them 2 rules. First of all, empathize with the person whose behavior you're trying to change. And second of all, be able to articulate their counter argument better than they can, which means you can't sit there and close your mind and say your beliefs are stupid or this is stupid or anything else. If you can't talk circles around somebody like Taubes when it comes to, insulin and obesity or whatever else, or at least stay on his level, you are going to fail if you try going head to head with him, even in arguments to a client. Because the client's going to hear what you say, and then they're going to hear a rebuttal from somebody in that camp, and that side's probably going to be better articulated because you don't even know what their arguments are. And misrepresenting the behavior you want to change never works. We know that.
And that's the key point of narrative is like, even if you take empathy out of it, even if you use empathy for the dark side to like spin a better narrative, at least you understand it enough to like fight the good fight if you believe you're on the good side of things. Like maybe Taubes is right. Maybe we all got fucked and his story was actually real, but does it really matter if everyone believes him? Well, take kind of how history produces. Well, history is essentially a narrative, and so the people with the best narrative are generally the ones who are going to outlive a lot of stuff. And that's I guess if you want to circle back to all the stuff we're talking about, like the reason why there's a lot of problems is because the narrative was fucked from people's perspective. So it'll be interesting to look back on this. There's the overarching thing.
Yeah. And point out, I really want to say, and I actually put this on social media recently, is, if you've got a client who is asking you about keto or paleo or CrossFit or something else, first of all, there's a very good chance there's someone in their world who is pushing it. There's a very good chance, like I found that if someone's asking about keto, they're already doing keto. And you've got 2 choices. You can shit the fuck all over it and criticize them and make them feel kind of crappy because they in some way, shape or form thought about this idea, researched it, and they're trusting to ask you about it. Or 2, you can say to them, okay, let's dig into this. Okay. I want to see, if this works for you. You're determined you want to do it. Let's try it. continue to maintain a very, very strong bond of trust, especially when it comes to nutritional ideologies. Maybe some of those things, they're not consistently sustainable for most people, especially people who have a tendency towards wanting quick fixes. So if and when they struggle with it or they realize this doesn't work for them, you've been there the whole way, they trust you, and then you can turn around and say, okay, are you willing to try this approach instead, because keto didn't really seem to work all that well for you? And they're bought in. They the trust bond there is really strong, so now you can help guide them into a direction that might be better for them, right? Versus just unilaterally killing that trust.
Has Alex ever done keto?
I've actually played with it, yeah. Actually, years and years ago, one of the first books on keto I ever read was The Ketogenic Diet by Lyle McDonald. Back then, I actually tried straight keto for about 6 months.
Yeah.
Then I switched over to a targeted ketogenic diet, then a cyclical ketogenic diet, and then I finally just gave up.
Do you like it? I did it for like 4 months. It was fucking just hard to eat almost 4,000 calories on keto because you're drinking oil.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. But my mom back in the day actually did the Atkins diet back when that was kind of the rage. So I kind of had the framework for that already. And when I went home that summer, she decided she would do the Atkins diet again to keep with me when I did keto. So it worked out pretty well. I mean, at the time I was just lifting. It wasn't great for performance, but I didn't really know any better. I knew I was coming at it from an approach of an end user who was like, oh, well, I'm just eating, eggs and bacon and meat all day. This is kind of fun.
Yeah.
And honestly, putting myself in those shoes, like, I didn't care about the rest of it. If any fitness professional had come at me with a wall of text like I see in the anti-keto things at that point, my eyes would have glazed over. I would say, I don't care. I like it. That's what it came down to.
I mean, I've known people. I've got an ex-girlfriend who was a diehard carnivore for a couple of years and felt the best ever. Another ex-girlfriend was a vegan, had been for years, very ethically, and both of them were pretty happy and did pretty well on those different approaches. We also forget all too often that different approaches to nutrition will feel very different for different people. I had a client who I think she tried, I can't remember, low carb or keto. No, she tried vegetarianism or veganism for a month. 3 weeks in, she felt like death. She fucking hated it. Her boyfriend was doing it, and she's like, nope, this isn't for me. So it's not like all humans exist on that perfect point on the median on the bell curve, right? It's like wildly different people, and different people are going to respond differently to higher carbohydrate, higher fat, low, whichever.
It was so funny, dude, when you're articulating it on Instagram pretty much pretty good, just like this, and those one dudes just shit on you. It was so funny.
My post recently?
Yeah, when the dude was like, we were like, you want to talk a wall of text, Alex? This guy had a wall of text on Instagram about evolution and fucking keto, and Andrew was just like, I fucking said that. Like, it's not for everyone. He said, it is for everyone, idiot.
And this goes to everything we're talking about. I'll give a little bit of. I recently put up a post because I've been absorbing a lot of Jordan's side stuff, talking to him. A lot of my social media is influenced by Jordan's thinking. So I'm like, okay, fine, fuck, I'll start using hashtags. I'd never really done them. Yeah. So I put up this post, and I think it was a really good post too, and it hit just right.
Just the diets are good for all the different diets are helpful.
For
certain people, whatever.
That. But anyway, so you go to my Instagram and you scroll through it and you'll see it's fairly recent. Anyway, so the highest ever reach I got on a post was 4,000 eyes on it. And that was literally Jordan Site sharing it on his story. And all of a sudden I got 400 new followers in a day. Cool. Awesome. Good post. And then so by the end of this one, the first one with hashtags, 40,000, 10 times the previous best reach. I'm like, I need to fucking go and use hashtags. It actually was up near the top, the second or third scroll down on the keto hashtag, which is this millions of posts thing. So first piece of advice, use fucking hashtags seriously in your social media.
Which was the dumbest advice ever, because everyone was like, yeah, where you been the last?
and I also made the joke of saying, listen, I'm way behind on this train. I totally shit the bed on this forever. But don't get so dug into not doing it, because there actually is value. So
I want to know what Alex is going to say just for a sec, because he was like, your eyes lit up.
People use the wrong hashtags though. Keep them simple in a lot of cases, things that people want to know about. A lot of people put in very clever hashtags, and so many of them, and it's you're not targeting it. because your message is not getting to the people who would be interested in this.
And this is where it gets better because he's like, he fucking used the keto hashtag and like that opened up a shitstorm on his.
It wasn't even a shitstorm. There's only a few of them, but I acknowledge this too. Is like if you're going to use hashtags like keto, where a lot of extremists and zealots and people who treat nutrition ideology like it's religion, and you're going to post stuff that's more, moderate or God forbid, evidence-based shit. And none of this stuff actually in any way attacked keto. I dared say, maybe it's not right for everybody, right? But I actually kind of defended it more than I actually criticize it. But of course, you're going to get someone who, oh my God, someone said something that doesn't agree with me. Shit, I got to go fucking attack that. And yeah, you get some pretty funny comments, but you have to laugh at this shit. You cannot take crap seriously if you're going to have a broader reach.
One of my biggest pastimes, and like when I'm at, like, I fucking hate Instagram, but it's kind of funny to go on like Lane's posts or Spencer Nadolsky's and just like watch people who like try to shit on them. It's so funny.
They've got two totally different.
It's like they don't even know who it is. It's just like like whatever. Like not everyone knows who Lane and Dr. Spencer Nadolsky, but they'll come in and say something like based on your post and just get ripped apart. It's so funny.
Spencer had this like sweet. What was this woman came in and like did this sweet child? I gotta go find this. You guys keep
basically
talking.
like diets work, and she was like,
Summer child.
Yeah, used to be summer. And she was like, you fucking idiot, and like everyone knows that it doesn't work, and you're the dumbest doctor ever.
She was
It was just hilarious because everyone shit.
Anyone who wants to know how to handle trolls and just morons on social media, go follow Spencer Nadolsky. He has fun with them. He laughs at it.
She had an opportunity. She shared her stuff. Everyone went and bitched at her on Twitter, but she probably like you have the audience now. Now fucking give them your information. She just deleted Twitter. I'm like, it was hilarious because like calling Spencer a sweet summer child because everyone was just like laughing because it's hilarious. But she backed off, which sucked. I wanted to see her rebuttal, and then never happened.
A shit ton of mileage out of it, right? And like, I think the mistake a lot of people make is they try to copy Lane. You mentioned Lane. I love Lane. Like a lot of my earlier nutrition stuff I learned was a lot of Lane's YouTube videos, which I still think are great resources. But Lane is very unique in his persona. His public persona is a bit of an overblown caricature of real life Lane. Real life Lane is a nice guy. He's still an intense dude, but he's actually one of the nicest people you'll meet. But online, he is performing for his audience and does it in a very unique way. And he is bombastic and will attack and do all the sort of stuff that honestly most of the rest of us should probably never do. And it works for Lane. But I don't think it's a good idea to try to copy how Lane does it because you're going to cause yourself an inordinate amount of stress.
Yeah, it's funny because if you want to have that kind of, almost a very kind of aggressive counterattack style, you got to be prepared to weather that when it comes back. And if you give it out there because you're not expecting them to take it personally,
yeah.
you almost kind of have to dehumanize the person behind the screen name a little bit when you do that. And in all fairness, they're doing that to you. So,
Well, and it goes back to that thing like what you're talking about. If you're gonna go argue with Gary Tobbs, you gotta have the fucking ammunition. And it was like we had Joel Seaman on my other podcast talking about half squats and whatever. But like the whole thing blew up because like Lane was like, "You're a fucking idiot," and Joel's like, "You're a fucking idiot." But at least they're both PhDs and they could like articulate their thoughts. Even if Lane hates him and Joel was just like kind of being a dick, it's still like if you're not those people, like you're not. If you put a post about veganism or fucking whatever, making fun of something Lane does, Lane's gonna rip you apart unless you know the research. And like there's, like you said, there's select people who can probably argue with them. You're probably one of them, but it's usually fitness professionals who have PhDs that kind of do that stuff and argue and can create a story. If you're not that, which most people aren't, like just be wary of it because, like you said, they're not gonna be able to weather the storm if that's the crowd you're pandering to.
Well, look at this. This is an important lesson in this too. What has Lane done in his career? He's a very prolific content producer. He is someone who, I don't agree with all of his ideas, and not all of his ideas turned out to be, factually 100% solid, but there's a good foundation of stuff there. He is someone who's added to the library of what our fitness industry understands and knows, contributes to the research. Joel Seaman, I definitely don't agree with a lot of his training ideas, but Joel is creating massive volumes of training knowledge and a different approach, and he gets a ton of attention. He's built a very, very big brand by the way he's gone about it. We mentioned Mike Israetel a couple times. Mike will occasionally get in some sort of internet argument. He's told us he does that just to keep his kind of conversation sharp. He's also one of the most empathetic people when engaging in conversation with different points of view. If you want to learn how to conduct yourself on social media, watch how Alex, you do the same thing, and watch how Mike Israetel interact with people with different points of view. You two are the two best people at this in our entire industry. Look at Mike Israetel's, I mean, your library of work is there. Look, Mike is producing
Alex has better jokes though.
thousands of YouTube videos and tons of other works and books and whatnot. These people have built an empire of knowledge and brand. If you haven't done all that sort of stuff, but you think you're going to behave the same way Lane does on Twitter, you're missing a really critical component. You haven't laid the foundation, the credibility, and that empire of content to actually turn around and behave that way.
Well, Alex is good at sarcasm too, which again, even with sarcasm, you got to be ready to kind of defend your position.
Yeah. And, you know, and every now and then it does get taken a little bit too seriously, but that's kind of the minefield. And you know, I think the other thing that I think is interesting, you know, reflecting a little bit on the whole idea of, you know, kind of chiming in and, you know, piling on and who does these kind of things, is I've noticed a lot of people who are serious professionals, they do have other things to do, and they're much less likely to leap in on these things unless it has the direct possibility of them continuing to give a lesson that they want to.
Yeah.
They're not just going to arbitrarily leap in and go, well, this is dumb, or oh, you should feel ashamed of yourself, or how dare you think this, unless it's something that then segues into a discussion that they actually want to have. And that's why you'll see people like, you know, sometimes like I said, like Mike engage, or like Lane engage and all that, or like Spencer engage, because it's actually an opportunity to have a discussion. But that's also why Lane is a bit more aggressive. But certainly the other guys, they're not demeaning, they're not rude or anything else. Other people will do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, we talked about that even with Joel. So like, as much as like no one agreed to Joel, and Joel's like, hey, this is my concept, whatever. We like straight up said, I like straight up asked him, I'm like, yeah, but a lot of this is marketing. He's like, yeah, like I want people to not get the full picture on here so that they can go to my fucking website, possibly buy a product. Here's all my research. You can disagree with it, but at least you got there. And like, that's the same thing with Lane. Lane went on there to go argue with him. So people go on his site, yeah, he's protecting science and all that stuff, but that's his avatar. And like, it's sweet when people admit it, but like the audience doesn't see that. They're like, no, Joel's a charlatan. I'm like, Joel's fucking kind of smart. Like, even if he's the dumbest trainer in the world, you still went to his fucking site.
Like, think about what Lane and Joel are sort of doing, and I don't think it was staged in any way, but it's kind of like these, you know, rapper battles. And what ends up happening is, you know, someone does a diss track or whatever, and they start having this battle. They both sell more records. They both get more acclaim and more renown and more attention. So it's very, very smart. It also,
and people end up dead, dude.
I suppose there's that.
That we lost Tupac and Biggie. Are you saying that? What are you fortune telling right now?
Well, one thing I was going to say is I don't think it's as productive if someone who hasn't built a whole lot starts picking, you know, high up targets and try to go after them.
Dude, someone tried to do that on ours, like with Joel Seaman. They're like, get me on a podcast, I'll fucking debate Joel. I'm like, no. Like, who are you? And like, obviously I'm doing the podcast to get views, so like, fuck off. But it was just like, he couldn't even read through that. He's like, no, this is my chance. I'm like, no one's doing that podcast with you. Do you think like, oh, I'm just gonna go on Rogan and slay Lane? Like, no, Rogan doesn't know you. Sorry, that's it. Anyways, sorry. That was my rant about it, because everyone wants to do that.
But that's it. Like, if you're going to try to make your name by taking down somebody big, you better have a message of your own. You better have something compelling of your own you can refer people to. Otherwise, you can't go out there and say, well, I'm going to slay all these dragons. If nobody knows who you are, you're not going to do a thing.
No. What you should do is just, I like your approach. Like, it's just like, I'm going to go on a bike and do Q&As, because then at least I can double use the content for this thing or that thing. It's like, that's sweet. It actually was quite hilarious when you did it, because I was like, how is he doing this? And I remember you were saying like, oh, I actually like researched the stuff and then I do it. Like, oh, you didn't. Yeah. I know you have a lot of it on the top of your head, but I was like, this is fishy here.
Yeah.
Not that smart.
Yeah, you know, because you know that was always it though. Is, you know, what's always kind of driven me with all of that is it's not that I hate being wrong, it's that I hate being obviously indefensibly wrong. You know, somebody asks me, what are your thoughts on this? The first thing I do is take whatever my gut reaction is on it and go research the opposite side. Mm-hmm. Because I don't want to sit there and just find stuff that agrees with my gut reaction and then come out and say that and have somebody present me with something very, very obvious that makes me look like a complete idiot, because then I've lost their trust. The best thing I can do is argue passionately for the side that I don't agree with. So that way I'm not going to get caught off guard. I know what my biases are. And that's, I think that's, again, comes down to what we're talking about, the whole, teach people empathy, teach them to steel man their opposition and everything else. Again, as a fitness professional, part of our job is changing people's behavior, is changing their minds, is changing their ways, is changing their perspectives on what they can and can't do. And for a lot of our clients, it's fighting lifetimes of thinking a certain thing and having them think another way. So we've got to put ourselves in our shoes, think about the things that they've been told that haven't worked, try to find the quality in those, find the parts that appeal to them, and then kind of morph that around into something we can work with.
Well, that's like turning research into content. And I think that was actually, if anyone was listening, go listen to that again. Because basically you research stuff and then you write a post on it. It's almost like your own education. But at the same time, like you're weaving this story, and it's not just a gut. Because I think I don't want to say that's the problem. It's whatever, it's not good or bad. But it's that gut reaction is the post that gets fucking puked onto social media, when they could have had an opportunity to then look at both sides to create something a little bit better, because I think that's where it's lost.
Do not go and directly attack the most deeply held emotional belief systems that people have. It goes back to CrossFit, or goes back to things like heat or whatever. If you directly attack these things without actually have built any trust with you, you're not going to change their minds at all, right? So you're right. But the entirety of this is, like Alex keeps saying, is coming back to empathy, right? And I think our industry can do a much, much better job of seeing empathy across the board. Empathy when we're interacting with our own community. I mean, and even myself, I can look back at this and go, where could I be more empathetic to people that I don't agree with the way that they do things?
And to keep it all in check, Lyle might make an appearance on your post to call you a fucking idiot.
Yeah, Lyle. No, it wasn't my post. Lyle, someone.
Totally, well, your post.
No, it was my meme that someone else shared. It was Eric Salazar shared it, and Lyle didn't know the fuck I was. And Lyle came in and just had this scathing, thoughtless teardown, and I just replied succinctly, but honestly, like Mike Azertel had some very choice comments about Lyle, unsolicited, on his last appearance on here. If you want to go back and listen to that, you're going to hear something really fucking funny. But, and I've said this privately a lot, but I'll say it publicly right now, Lyle will never appear on a podcast that I host. I'll never put him on. I have no interest in
I think we should get him on with Alex.
Unless it's someone who's literally going to rip him apart. No, I mean, even someone like Lyle, he contributes a lot of.
I shouldn't have brought it up. I'm sorry. I just want to make a joke.
I'll actually put some context in this. I mean, he's contributed an enormous amount of things to the industry, but kind of going to what we're saying, Lyle's a great example of someone who does not employ empathy and acts like a complete jackass and an asshole most of his interactions on social media with other people. And Lyle's brand and his ability to actually share his knowledge and influence behavior change was completely lost in the way that he actually just conducts himself and interacts with other people. And my first interaction with him was extraordinarily nasty. And so I'm not remotely interested in pandering to him, and I'm not interested in putting him on any platform that I have or sharing any of his information outside of this little conversation, to where I'm going to put him in front of anyone who trusts me as someone who filters the people they should be following. You're on the podcast. We've mentioned Mike Izertel a number of times. I love what Luca Hocevar puts out in terms of social media content. I think Dean Somerset's work is some of the most influential that has taught me more than anything else about movements and mobility, you name it. I'm not wasting my time advocating for someone who behaves the way that someone like Lyle does.
Well, because I think it's really unfortunate because I mean, even unsolicited, I mentioned that one of his books was very, very influential for certainly a phase of my life. And you say, well, you have so much quality here, you could contribute to people. Why do you insist on alienating everyone? Because then you remove yourself from the conversation, and you remove your position from the conversation. You say, I am such a reprehensible person in some people's eyes that anything I stand for, people want to stand against. And you're like, you hurt your own cause by being like that. And I mean, hell, we see that in politics right now, for Christ's sake. I mean, that's just kind of what's going on.
Well,
Oh,
even if we put it back down to where we first started, like Andrew's bitching about shaming and all this shit, but there's been a few people who've taken themselves out of the equation of, we'll call it the fit pro circle, but like an influential circle, like maybe you could have an impact. They pulled themselves out of that just by certain tactics used the last 4 months. And people, I don't know, people don't normally forget dumb shit. Especially if you keep inserting yourself like Lyle. But it's just, it's kind of funny because I think any professional listening is that your work almost gets disregarded, even if it's good, which kind of sucks because, like you said, it could be impactful.
Well, put it this way, and this is a good way to think about it. When I put Alex on the podcast, when we put Spencer Nadolski on the podcast, when we put, you go back through the library of most of our guests, there's probably about 3 or 4 exceptions that we are like, in retrospect, maybe not. But do I trust this person? If someone who's an up and coming trainer messages and posts, interacts with them, do I trust the person that is on the podcast to be thoughtful in their response? If the question is maybe doesn't necessarily agree with the way they believe, I do not trust Lyle to not be a complete fucking asshole to someone who has heard of him on this podcast. And if I can't trust him not to behave that way, he's not going on the podcast. I'm sorry, because I'm endorsing him. Anybody we put on here, we're endorsing, in a sense, right?
To endorse.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult too because there are people who I actually philosophically disagree with, but I do trust them. In other words, like, for example, there are people who I think their approach to science is terrible, but I think their overall message is good enough, and I think they're so empathetic and so generally good human beings that I'm like, yeah, you know what, follow this person. And there are things that I disagree with, but that I respect this person enough to respectfully disagree with them on this. So if this person and I have fundamental arguments or disagreements on something, that I'm not going to make fun of you for listening to them. That I'm not going to talk shit about this other person. It's just going to be a conversation. I'm just saying I don't agree with them on everything. You don't have to agree with everybody on everything to consider them a good source or to consider them an empathetic person or to think about them as a positive influence. Something like my friend, Ben Pekulski. A lot of his stuff, I read a lot of his stuff and I say, what, I think he's missing the boat here. Or I don't think this is right, or I don't think this is right. But obviously his whole approach, if you take, aside from all the details, if you take his approach to general lifting and health and getting good sleep and meditation and mindfulness and all that, those are good lessons. I'm not going to sit there and, he's a good friend of mine. I'm going to say, go ahead, follow Ben. You don't have to listen to everything he says to fundamentally get quality from him. And I know he is an empathetic, nice enough guy that he is never going to make you feel dumb for asking him a question. I know if he disagrees with you, he's never going to make you feel like an idiot. I like that. That's intelligent discussion.
Not to mention the underlying thing that part of what we've been talking about here is people tend to confine themselves within ideological echo chambers, be it social, political, nutritional, training philosophies. And then when you box yourself into that corner, well, you're not really learning a whole lot. I think we should spend a lot of time listening to and absorbing people with different points of view. I think that's one of the greater problems of the world right now is, the greater polarization. People are very, very intolerant to ideas that don't align with their own. And that's to all our detriment. I think we will be better off if we expose ourselves to different ideas. One, it will challenge your own pre-existing belief systems and your own biases. And it's the only way to get past some of those, because we all don't agree on every single point. So therefore, I hope anyone listening is kind of realizes you're probably wrong about some really important shit, right? You're probably really right about some important shit, but you're probably wrong about some important shit. You may not truly know what you're wrong about. So you'd better expose yourself to some people who think differently, because maybe it'll get you on the right track. I've definitely shifted my opinion on any number of these. Very early in my career, I read Wheat Belly and thought that was the fucking holy grail of nutrition. Seriously, I actually thought that a long time ago. Now I realize the problems with that.
But even cardio for lifters, like you guys just did one on Shark Experts with Luke Lehman and Mike T. Nelson, but you were tackling like cardio for essentially getting bigger and strength gains, performance and stuff, which not too long ago was like the Instagram post of like cardio is going to ruin your gains. And then it became the other way around, and it's still happening. And I'm sure you've been around long enough where it's happened with other stuff. And it's just kind of, I don't know. I think if you take a step back, you can kind of see the trends. and then have your own evaluation of some of the stuff. But you can't know it if you don't know both sides.
Yeah. Yeah, and you honestly, you have to spend a certain amount of time, whether it's, you know, whether it's truly embracing something or just kind of, you know, enveloping yourself in something you disagree with. You have to spend time on the other side of the fence to really understand who you're talking to. And, you know, again, I think if there's one thing we kind of keep touching back on here, it's being a communicator is critical to what we do. And it's something I would tell everybody who's interested in fitness at all, is just be a better communicator. And being a better communicator doesn't mean using longer sentences or using more precise language necessarily. It means being able to speak in such a way that the person that you're talking to says, oh my God, this person hears me.
I think that's a good point to wrap it all up, because that was Alex's long wisdom. That was our short answer to a long podcast. Where do people find you? You're the last guest. This is the last time I get asked that on here.
Oh, man. CompleteHumanPerformance.com is my website. You can still find me on Instagram, alex.viada. And I'm around. Occasionally you'll see me pop up in a Facebook group somewhere, or, you know.
And you like swords. You like swords, and like anyone who's listening, he's on the camera, and there's just swords in his background. There's like 5 of them and an axe.
And that's a hunting spear over there.
And it's a spear. Okay, cool. That never made the Instagram.
I don't know why. That just made me think of it. I don't know if either one of you guys have seen this new Netflix movie, Charlize Theron. It's called The Old Guard.
Yeah, it's so good. The Old Guard.
Don't spoil it for anyone, because fuck me is just a great movie. Like, seriously, watch it. It's badass. And you know how like Hollywood like always flops these like when they overtly insert woke concepts into it. These guys do a good job of a female lead, a secondary female protagonist who's incredible, and I won't give away a hint of it, but like there's some other stuff that goes in that direction, but they weave it in so seamlessly into a really fucking cool movie. And again, no giving away the concept for someone who hasn't seen it, because there's something will happen at the beginning of the movie that's going to fuck you right up, and then you'll see who these people actually are. There are some things that create existential dread when you get into imagining yourself in their world, being in their shoes. That's all I'll say. Go watch this movie. It's fucking cool.
What's the thing that she has? Have you seen it, Alex?
Yes, I have.
Is her thing, because you pulled up an axe, is it an axe or is it like a hammer axe? Because she had that thing that's like this circle thing.
Yeah, it's like a gigantic double-sided axe.
Yeah. Okay.
Bigger than mine.
And it was based on a comic. I think it's on a comic series. I didn't know. Like it was kind of just popped up. I'm like, oh, I'm watching this. Like, this is everything I like in a movie.
Oh yeah. It is the best new movie I've seen in a really long time, and it's like it's sort of John Wickish, but with a really cool concept behind it. Like John Wick.
And
yeah,
she still looks good. Like, how old is she at this point?
I think Charlie's
like 50. No, maybe I'm wrong.
No, but she's just a badass. She's actually one of the best female action leads.
Yeah, agreed.
She carries that movie really, really well. And the supporting cast, they're great. They're all really fun. And so here's the thing I will say. So the main villain is Dudley Dursley from the Harry Potter movies. That guy grown up, and he's still one of the strangest looking human beings ever.
Dude, she's 55.
What?
That's
really
crazy. Yeah, like that's good for her. She looked so good. Anyways, my wife's like in the background. Like, what are you talking about?
I just saw Dudley Dursley, whatever his name was, in that actor in The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. He plays a bit role, no pun intended, if you've ever seen it, which is also Coen Brothers. You know, the guys who did No Country for Old, all that kind of stuff. So,
Argo and all those stuff. Yeah.
Now I gotta watch it. Damn it. Okay. Yeah. Any last words, Andrew?
Well, I mean, you know, obviously you and I are both going to be very strong presences on our individual podcasts. And again, like I said, anyone who has been a loyal fan of this, you know, you have 2 options. You're already on this download stream, subscription stream, and then obviously they can go over and check out yours as well. But, you know, we've loved this ride. I mean, 150 episodes is pretty damn cool. And we certainly appreciate everybody who's been diving into them all the time. I get people who are discovering it. It's new, and like going back through a library of 150 is terrifying. I remember, you know, when I found the Fitcast, I mean, that's 500 episodes deep, and trying to dig into a lot of that stuff. But, you know, there's a lot of gold in here. You know, admittedly, we've probably thrown out a handful of dud episodes for sure. but I really stand by the quality of the overwhelming majority. Certainly the average of what we've been doing has been great. I'm very grateful for the guests that we've had on here. And I keep saying it, guys, if, reach out to us individually, send us a message, let us know what you think. I've gotten a few messages recently that have been really cool and supportive. And we want to continue to share as much positive information as possible that will both, make your career better, in terms of the career success side, the knowledge-based side of it. And, I know we have some enthusiasts who are listening, and we always want to deliver on something that you guys can take away too. So, if this has been meaningful to you, go give us a great review on iTunes. Go check out Dean's podcast. Give him a great review on that. Go and follow and watch Alex's adventures. He's genuinely fun. It's not traditional, pedantic, stereotypical fit pro bullshit. That's for sure. Alex is doing a lot of really cool shit, especially if you're into the outdoor stuff, especially if you're into, sports that have both strength and endurance stuff. You are the resource on that. Right? You are the person people should be learning from. If you're a trainer who is, working with athletes in that realm, go follow Alex. Thanks to everyone for continuously supporting us, and I look forward to the feedback on what we have going forward in the future.
Thanks, buddy.
Shut up and sit down.